Together, and we're ready to talk about how that round went, and also just some general thoughts on the whole season. How's it going, everyone? Specifically, Liam, how are you?
I am personally well. My team is terrible. I made some mistakes this weekend, but thank you for asking specifically me.
I wouldn't want you to feel like my questions were too general anyway. So, how are you, Will?
I am very
specifically.
Well. I'm going very well. Just generally, I'm also going well. It was a great weekend for my Geelong team, smashing their highest ever score, marching their way into the final. So very, very happy with the weekend, and just generally how I went with the fantasy as well.
Fantastic. And how are you specifically, Jono?
I'm good. It was a great weekend of footy. I missed a lot of the Saturday games. I had some family events, as I seem to do all the time at the moment. But wow, honestly, I was just remembering on Saturday night, I caught up with Will, and he told me that Kiara Bowers had scored 184, and honestly, I lost my mind. Like,
he did.
I was just I can't believe this.
He genuinely thought I was pulling his leg. He was like, "You're kidding," and I was like, I literally had to hold up my phone to show him that is what she scored.
As someone that was watching that game intently, because Freo looked like they were going to lose
yes, they did.
first half, and I was like, come on, guys, pull it through. And watching with a not huge AFL watcher as well, it was just tackles every 30 seconds. Tackles. Who was that? Oh, that was Bowers. Bowers again.
Who else but Kiara Bowers?
Not surprised. By the end of the game, pretty sure everyone could point out who Bowers was. So that was great watching.
Not just 22 tackles, but 34 disposals as well. She was just doing it everywhere across the park.
Yeah, it was the Bowers show. Very, very happy to watch that, both as a Freo supporter and as someone that has Bowers as their captain last week. So maybe we'll move on to the fantasy side of things. I'm just going to go in a random order here. Will, how did you go?
I scored a 1,298, just shy of the 1,300 mark. Finished with a round rank of 466th, which unfortunately meant that I dropped about 20 places, but I still finished in that top 300 with 289. So overall pretty happy. Not quite as good as last season, but given the much stronger competition, thanks to the growth that we've seen with AFLW Fantasy, I'm pretty chuffed with the outcome.
Yeah, nice. Having done the math just quickly in my head, given the number of players has approximately doubled and your overall rank has approximately doubled, you held fairly well compared to last season.
Yeah, I think I can be, hanging my hat on that, as I've been consistent, if nothing else, with the way I've gone.
Well, not your top 100 hat, but a different hat.
I have no hats, but regardless, I will hang whatever hat that I do have. My signed hat, I have a... For those who haven't heard about my signed hat, I've got a hat that's signed by most of the players we've interviewed. It's the pride of my belongings. So,
and a couple of other legends.
And a couple of others. I've got some W Award winners on there as well. Still need the legend Turbo Bowers herself. That might be a next season thing, but that's the hat that I'm hanging because I don't have a fantasy hat, sadly.
What about you, Will? How did you go? Sorry.
Well, this week I scored a 12,000... No.
12,000.
Sorry.
Wow,
sorry,
I feel like I heard that number before. I feel like another member of the team has scored that many points.
1298, just, exactly the same as that last guy.
Did you know Will scored 1,298 points as well?
Wow.
Oh, okay. What about you, Jono?
Yeah, pretty good. Let's see, I had a 1,273 for the week, which put me at a round rank of 552nd, leaving me 397th for the season, which I guess halfway through I would have been pretty disappointed by, but given how fast I've been sliding these past couple of rounds, I'm happy to stop the slide and end there, to be honest.
Yeah.
And look, it was one of those seasons where I had to... about halfway through, I think I had to risk it to have any chance of making the top 100, and it didn't pay off. But these things happen, I prefer to have risked it than not to have tried at all. So, happy days.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep, so we've got Will on a top 300, John on a top 400. I complete the downhill set of a top 500 score. I got a 1250 points this week, which is pretty good objectively, but not compared to this round. And Will was saying even, after Jono's disbelief at Bauer's score this week, the fact of having someone who was 97% of the top 100, if not more, pretty much everyone that had her would have had her as their captain, means that there's an easy kind of, 350 or so points there.
368.
368. That top score was going to be massive. So it just made my 1250, which would have been a great score, say, in round one, look not too great, with a round rank of 636. For a overall rank of 476. So slid another 13 spots from last week, but top 500 it'll have to do. Not what I would have wanted for myself, but so be it. And Liam.
Yeah.
Moving on, moving swiftly.
Guys,
on.
our team was really bad. I made a mistake with my captains because I made a last-minute change and had to reverse my side to be able to fix my trades, which of course also changed my captain. So I was stuck with Jazz Garner, and so instead of having, someone score 100 plus, I had Jazz Garner who scored 62 as my captain. So whilst everyone else in the comp had 380 odd or 360 odd points, I had 124. So my round rank was never going to be good. My round score was never going to be good. And that was before getting a donut from Emma Carney being dropped for what I have a sneaking suspicion will be a much more serious injury than they will ever let on.
Like any other week, or most other weeks, if you had accidentally captained Garner, she would have been one of the best options. So you wouldn't actually be that disappointed with that move or that accidental move. But yeah, this week it was unfortunately not the week.
No, it was not an intentional decision because I, much as we discussed last week, thought that she would get a tag. And as effective as it was, whilst very frustrating, it was nice to see that our prophetic qualities as a podcast have carried through even in the face of my own demise.
We also got the prophetic qualities of the Emma Carney out, which was another one which was like, good work on us for spotting it. Very unfortunate for you, Liam.
Yeah. But I also had Montana Ham out and Ruby Slasher out. I really had to take a risk somewhere because I actually needed to try and improve my team. And so, from those small mistakes, a terrible round score below 1100, I think that's all we need to say, people.
Well, on a happier note, why don't we go through our plus threes?
Yeah, look, I'm very excited because I've gotten my plus 3 on Kiara Bowers this week. As I said before, 184 this week, the highest score that we've ever seen in AFLW Fantasy, and
by 20 points.
By a huge
Which was
margin.
her own other high score, right?
Yeah, her own record from like 3 weeks ago. It's so recent. It's incredible what form she's in. I can't believe it. What do you even say to that? Yeah, it's something else. She's playing the game on a whole other level at the moment.
Absolutely. And it was so interesting with Bowers because she started off kind of slow. It just meant that no one really had her at the start. It makes me wonder how it'll go if she plays again next season. Is she going to come back in that elite form? Because if so, I mean, we've seen what she can do. Talking about ceilings, that's a huge ceiling.
Yeah, to Bowers or not to Bowers is going to be the question that's going to basically plague us until she retires, I think. It's something
Pretty
else.
much. What about you, Will?
For me, I went with Elise Parker. I know a lot of people had traded her out, unfortunately. So there might have even been someone on this podcast who did just that.
Maybe.
But
that could be.
I was very happy with the way Elise Parker started the season. She was one of my speculative picks that I thought would do better. Started the year really well. Sort of form tapered off a bit once teams figured out that you stop Elise Parker, you stop the Giants. But she had a good matchup this week in the Gold Coast and finished the year with 106, which I was very happy to have held firm on Elise Parker to get that score.
Absolutely. Spewing, I didn't, to be honest.
Only a third 100 for the year. Nice to have finished with it. Book ended with hundreds.
Yeah, it would have been a great score to captain, potentially, do you reckon, Liam?
Oh, that would have actually been a really good score to captain.
Yeah.
That's a really good call, actually.
Yeah.
That's astute.
Yeah.
I don't think Liam's considered that before.
Yeah.
Wait, I actually hadn't thought about that. I thought Jazz Garner was going to go 200 points. That's what I thought, to be honest.
What about you, Liam? Who's your plus 3?
I am going to put the plus 3 on Eileen Gilroy. I could have gone with with Rowbottom, but I really think that there was a bigger ceiling score out there, as we saw with what Ali Drennan did. So I'm going to give it to Gilroy because she was the highest scoring defender for the round and probably my only good speculative pick for the season when I jumped on her at the same time as someone who I won't talk about. She was very lowly owned, but she's really solidified herself in that Hawthorn side as a really consistent good player. Now, setting aside the 29 last week, she really came back big this week, and I think it's also been good to have her in my side just more generally because she's a very entertaining footballer to watch. So, +3 to Gilroy.
Very nice. And on an equal 81-point round, I've given my +3 to Paxman, who, as I usually do my trades during the podcast, building off everyone's ideas, I traded in Paxman because we were talking about how good some of these Melbourne players were going to be coming into the final round, and she came through, which was good. Happy with that 81 for my most recent trade-in. Over to the neg threes. Liam, I think we know who yours is going to be. Would you like to elaborate, or are you good?
I think we've mentioned the words Jasmine and Garner enough at this point, and I don't really want to pile on. But yes, very effective tagging work done by Meg McDonald, as we all predicted. Obviously, we talked about Meg McDonald's elite tagging capabilities last week, and not Grace Eakin. Tough to watch, Asma C. Now, not a C intentionally, but still 62 from the best forward in the game isn't great.
Yeah. What about you, Jono?
I think I've given my -3 this week to Anne Hatchard. She's put out an 80, which I guess in the scheme of things is still a very good score, but it's just not what you're expecting when, I paid up for Anne Hatchard about halfway through the season. She was probably at 160k at the time, and since then it's just been disappointing score after another. So, taking out the -3 this week for me.
I've given my -3 to Bodie this week.
Sorry.
Pretty sure she might have got the +3 last week as well.
She got the +3 last week, and she was my recommendation, so sorry.
Well, she was a recommendation of a good basis. Like, she had 2 good games coming up. We knew Brisbane Lions were going to score heaps. We knew she was going to be playing in that forwardish area with the potential for goals and lots of points. It just didn't quite come through. Unfortunately, a couple of the other Lions seemed to take the points off her.
Yeah, she was pretty much the only Brisbane forward who didn't do well because both Hodder and Wardlaw had very good games, so you were just unlucky to pick the one that didn't.
Yeah, so I don't think it's necessarily like an oversight or like an apology recommendation. It's more just bad luck. Yeah. But annoying bad luck because it was a 37, which is not what you want. When you've got like looking at your shell of a team and you're like, at least these people will score well, and one of them doesn't. And then the other one doesn't, which is Swanson. So 35 there for a historically reliable mid who probably should have done a bit better than that. But we hear about an injury.
Yes. I think as much as you could say we'd like better from her, it is tough when she is injured.
Well, I can't say that I knew that before the game. So.
I don't think she knew it before the game.
I don't think anyone did.
Therefore, it is fair to apply a -3 to a person who's well overpriced and scores you a 35.
Yeah, just before we go on too far, on that point about Greta Bodie not scoring well as a forward, she was the lowest scoring forward for Brisbane. You'd have been better off selecting Jade Ellinger, Ruby Sfark, Jessie Wardlaw, Dakota Davidson, Michaela Puaga, and Courtney Hodder.
I remember talking about Puaga as one of the basement prices.
Like, you could have picked literally any other forward. The only one that would have been worse, and it would have been by 1 point, is part-time forward, part-time ruck, Taylor Smith.
So, look.
It's
Luke,
like...
couldn't have helped it.
It was ridiculous. Watching that game, it's like marks galore in the forward line.
Except for Greta Bodie.
Like, Courtney Hodder and Ruby Sfark were tackling. It was like elite pressure. And I couldn't believe that Bodie was doing nothing. It was hard to watch.
Look, the only thing harder to watch than everyone in the Brisbane Lions kicking goals and getting massive points other than Bodie was probably Will's watching experience of Hannah Priest.
Hannah Priest. Hannah Priest, my love-hate relationship with Hannah Priest continued across the entirety of that game. Hannah Priest, highest scoring player on the ground at quarter time with 36. Hannah Priest, I think she was the second or third highest scoring player on the ground at half time with 52. Hannah Priest finishes the game on 42. She gave away 3 free kicks in the third quarter to finish the third quarter on 40.
And then did not
and
like yours.
then just got one more handball for the game or whatever it was to get her to 42. And at halftime I was thinking, you beaut, I've got a defender here who could push up towards 100, and she ended up scoring less than what she was on. And that's put her straight into my black book, which is the Death Note, not the black book that we're going to talk about next week.
The Never Again.
The Never Again one. Because she has burnt me too many times this season after I brought her in when she hit that 2-game patch of form, and then it's just been terrible ever since.
So, having a look at the top scores for this round, huge, absolutely massive first position this round of 1536 points. That is just... They obviously had Bowers as captain. Like, there's no other way you can get there.
With arguably the best team name in the competition.
Yes, I love it. Insert pun name here, which is very fitting given that most of us have pun names for our teams. Yeah, that massive score for insert pun name here pulled them up all the way to 79th. So, don't know where they were sitting before that necessarily, but they finished with a hat.
Oh,
so,
they would have
congratulations.
had to be outside the 100 to have ended there after that score. That's a great way to finish the year.
And as a gift to that coach, if they are a listener, please DM me on Twitter and we will come up with a punny team name for you next season. For whichever team or player you want, we can come up with something.
Yes, we will brainstorm something for you based on whatever you want.
Moving on to a bit of a season recap then. Overall first winner has been announced. Corey, congratulations for winning the Season 7 competition. Huge score. Great work there, team.
So Emu Parade came second overall with a 7th round rank overall, so they've streamed home to finish second. And then the team Not Sure has finished 14th for the round to finish 9 points behind them in third place. So congratulations to those 3 coaches.
Yeah, almost some real Cinderella stories. It was a real close finish to the season.
Yeah, some of the teams that were sitting in that top 3 just didn't quite get it done to keep their podium finishes alive, which was quite interesting.
I think from memory, one of them got stuck with Emma Swanson's injury, and that was an unfortunate reality.
It's a tough injury to take when it's costing you a prize pool.
Yep.
And just while we're on that prize pool, do have to give a bit of a shout out to Tim Guest and his team at Infinite Wealth for their support throughout the season and for offering up such great prizes. I think it's absolutely fantastic that they've jumped on board and really appreciate what they've done for the game. Tim's also been jumping on the Twitter Spaces every week, and he's absolute jet. Yeah, I love how his mind works when it comes to fantasy. He's very analytical mind. I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome to see a sponsor not just kind of like throw money at the game and then walk away, but he's been so active, really invested in the game as well.
Really cares about it, really invested, and he's been really fantastic at interacting with the community as well. So thanks again to Tim and the team at Infinite Wealth.
But I think it also goes to show as well just the kind of power that fantasy has, that you can have prizes like this, which are substantially higher than what the AFLW offers for winning their kind of officially sanctioned tipping competition. And I really think that hopefully this is kind of another indication of the way in which the women's game is going.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the way in which the women's game is going, look, now that the season's done, what reflections and thoughts do we have on how it went?
I thought it was a really great season, to be honest. I think there was a lot of chaos towards the end of the season, which really made the last couple of rounds a lot of fun. And there are a lot of different coaches employing a lot of different strategies this season. So that was a lot of fun to watch. There are a lot of coaches that opted to start with the big 3 in Hatchard and Marinoff and Bowers to start the year. But a lot of coaches didn't. They went really light on in midfield. And both types, from what I can tell, ended up being very, very competitive late in the season. So it was a lot of fun to see that happen. And look, I'm going to use a bit of an analogy here, which I heard on another podcast recently, and I'm just blatantly going to rip it off, so apologies. But what I really, really love about AFLW Fantasy at the moment is that it's so new, and we've got all of these different strategies that I guess are familiar to us because it's AFLW, but it's still a new game and we're all trying to figure it out. It's kind of like we've been tasked with building an IKEA set of drawers, but we haven't been given the instructions. We've built drawers before, but we are still trying to put it together in the way that this is supposed to be built. What's the optimal way to get through this season? And we're looking around at different coaches who are going, oh, they've done a really, really good thing with that. That's where that shelf goes. I'll put that there. So I really have appreciated the collaboration that's happened in the community and being able to see what other people are doing.
I love the analogy. Always keen for an IKEA analogy.
You don't get it, do you?
That implies that we fumbled through building the drawers in season 6, and then we came with a mental script of how to build the drawers in season 7,
It's
and
a
that is
completely
not quite what happened to me.
completely different set of drawers this season. That's the thing. It's a whole new drawer, and we're trying to go, why isn't it like last season? But it's a new one. We're just getting the sense of it.
It's like maybe what we built last year was a chair, and now it was like an entire bed frame. Like, I think that's my big takeaway from this year, is that we were really flying very much by the seat of our pants, both in terms of just the problems that get offered up by expansion season, and then just the incredible changeabilities in roles and in game styles from some of the lower down sides in the competition. But then also, you had to be that much more reactive because there were just that many more people competing, and you had to strive to be as high as you, like thinking as analytically as possible as often as you did. And that meant taking some risks because, you couldn't stand pat for as long as you could last year. Last year, it was very much typified by fewer people, but then also we had the ability to get average scores for a number of different teams throughout the year, which again changed the strategy. So it really was a completely different year. And you really had to be, I would say, more ruthless, more brutal. And if you went the wrong way on one trade, you were really scrambling.
Yeah, and I think something else which was really fantastic was the Moreira's Magic Up subscription, giving us the ability to see what was happening in the top 100. Because in the previous season we played, we were just sort of completely flying blind and just going on what we thought. But it just really changed the way we thought about things, because a lot of the time we were going, I could pick up this player, but it doesn't really help me because there's 60, 70% of the top 100 have them. So it was another thing that really made for an interesting change in the way we've structured our teams this season. But much like you guys have said, just the growth in the community, the way that it's grown in the space of a couple of months really has just been super impressive. And it's been really fun to see the different strategies and the way we've gone about it, how it's changed, despite the fact that the game is really almost exactly the same, but it just hasn't been, and that's something I've absolutely loved this season.
The thing I really found different about this season, and definitely enjoyed more, is that last season, it was the first time we were all a bit new. We were coming at various levels of fantasy knowledge and AFLW knowledge, and it was kind of just us spitballing. We would have great chats, and we would find anyone else that we knew that was relatively interested and chat at them more so than with them. But now
still happens. Still happens.
Definitely still happens. But now we've got this whole kind of Twitter community, and you've got a thought, and you're like, oh, which trade should I do? You've got heaps of people to ask. We've made one-on-one connections that we can be chatting to about our trades. You can put a post out on Twitter, and you're going to get a lot of responses, and it makes for the whole kind of spitballing and decision making a lot more fun and collaborative than it was kind of a bit, not that it was isolating, but a little bit more like, oh, I don't really know if this is a good call, and there's not that many different opinions to help me get there.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing for me as well. Thinking about the fact that it's just this year that we were doing it in January, and there will be fewer people posting about their teams on Twitter on a Monday than there are now Twitter group chats talking about it with an incessant number of notifications every single day. The community has exploded. Now, for those people that are in that Twitter chat, don't worry, guys. I've muted the notifications. It's fine. You don't have to worry. There's just a few too many for a phone that I ostensibly use for work. But I think I'm also very grateful for the size and the speed at which it's grown. It's been a great wave to be swept up in.
Yeah, it's such a strange change, because basically last season, the extent of our sort of trade talk was you guys basically coming to me going, hey, what's this player doing? And I'd be like,
what do you know about this person?
And I'd be like, here's a small snippet that I know. I have no idea how it applies to fantasy. And now we've just got so many more resources, so many more people watching games through the fantasy lens. It's just been fantastic to see the interactions taking place. And as Liam said, it's gone from a couple of people on Twitter on the Monday to just hundreds and hundreds. It's just so fantastic to see.
Yeah, one of those new resources that I've really loved is going back to what you were saying, Will, about the Magic Up subscription. I've really liked that we've now got team-based stats where you can go, all right, well, this matchup's coming up. And rather than us having to dig through their last 3 matches and going, wow, what position do they play? What are the average? You've got the numbers there to be able to go, all right, we know that Brisbane's a really, really tough matchup. That's those stats and the articles that come out from Mick and the AFLW Fantasy podcast on that subscription. It's an absolutely cracking read each week.
Yeah, fantastic resource. Mm.
I think one thing that really, like, obviously I'm a Freo supporter and a massive Bowers fan, but even seeing the fact that the Dockers put out, I think, a post on either Twitter or Insta or both, like citing her 184-point fantasy. So they're like, obviously they're talking about, you know, most disposals, most tackles, like they're sharing a lot of, the footy clubs are sharing a lot of stats about their plays when they do really well from a game perspective, but seeing them get on board with Bowers' phenomenal fantasy score was like, oh, this is becoming part of the conversation in AFLW. It's becoming a bit more intertwined, which is really exciting to see as well.
Yeah, and hopefully that sort of leads to a bit more interaction in the fantasy space with the clubs next season going forward. It's good to see that Fremantle's obviously on board, especially with a player as good as Kiara Bowers, but it'd be fantastic to see some of the other clubs get on board next season, so really hopeful that that's something that'll pick up.
There's also one thing which I wanted to call out, which was the lack of high ownership numbers amongst players at the top end. I know that Selby, the GOAT that he is, was mentioning at the start of the season, he and the Wongster were trying to, I suppose, reduce the numbers of players that kind of had to be in everyone's teams. Sort of take it like Kiara Bowers at the end of the season. If you didn't have her, you couldn't keep up. But it was something that they were trying to, I suppose, change just based on the positions that players had. And I think they did a really, really good job of it because, I mean, no player ended the season with over 50% ownership. And whilst there were a few players like Bowers that you just had to have, if you look beyond, you know, 1 or 2 superstars in each line, the ownerships, even amongst the top 100 coaches, were quite spread out. I mean, even if you're looking at, I don't know, take the forward line, you had Garner and Abby Mackay as the 2 Jets that most coaches had to get them there. But after that, no one above 50% ownership. And it just meant that there were so many different strategies you could use to make your way to the top.
Yeah, definitely a perk of having, you know, 4 new clubs come and so many new faces of talent, and switching around of players between teams to accommodate for those expansion clubs meant, you know, someone that wasn't a premium before is now elite scoring and another consideration for your team. It really, I mean, it made it hard, but it made it very interesting.
And yeah, as the king of the uniques, I just want to say, like, this was something that I found super interesting as the season went on, as you say, because like I had Ash Riddell, who was quite highly owned at the start of the season, and then by the end of the season, she was a unique player despite being a top 4 player last season. And it was things like that where, for me, I didn't start the season that well. You guys basically showed everyone how to build a fantastic side to start with. But I felt that my strength throughout the season was the way that I did my trades throughout the year. That's what basically got me back into contention. And it just showed that it doesn't matter how you start or you know, there's so many different ways you can build a team that can be successful. And even though none of us did quite reach that top 100, we did give a pretty wide breadth of different strategies throughout the year that I'm sure a lot of people did use very successfully to get towards that top 100.
Yeah, and that's in just a 10-round season. Like, imagine if we don't know what the next season's going to look like for the FLW. Imagine if we get the full 17-round season. This game's going to change even more.
Woo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fingers crossed. That would be awesome.
That would be fantastic.
10 weeks, just not enough to play fantasy. Like, when we were counting down, every round is 10% done. It's like, oh, another 10%. I just want to keep going.
And this is just me flagging something now. Next year is not going to be any better for us because the draft is going to be completely different. It's going to be over ages only. So all people that didn't declare. So there's probably some 18-year-olds that will be in the upcoming draft because they didn't want to declare when they were 17. But it's not like we're going to have like,
a Montana hand,
well, Montana hand.
Whole team worth of kids out.
But you might have like 10 players who might have gone in the top 40 picks in the prior draft. Like, it's going to be completely different again. It might be like you might have to go madness because we're not going to have nearly as many bargain price players. A, because we won't have expansion sides, and then B, because the draft is going to be complete. It's like it's going to be years before there is a stabilized strategy for AFLW, because every year it's like a little tinker here and there.
Definitely sounds like people are going to need resources to listen to maybe give them some help.
Look at you, a company man, plugging away.
Like, on that
I think
point,
I'm the only non-company person here, actually. Ironically.
So, like, I think I mentioned this before, but like the women's is 120 years or something behind the men's. Like, it's going to take time, but it's got plenty of time. Like, we can't be holding it to the standard, both the fantasy game and the structure and the consistency of how the league is played when it's got 120 years behind the men's comp. I think it presents really fun challenges with fantasy as AFLW grows and the fantasy strategies have to keep changing.
Yeah, I just don't want it to make it sound like I was complaining about the fact that we're not going to be able to apply the same strategies again. It's just a fun new challenge yet again.
Absolutely. And we've got to say, whether it's an official platform or whether it's Selby doing it, and Selby's done such a fantastic job at making this platform what
Absolutely.
it is. I can't stress enough.
And the
how
Wongster.
much work
We can't forget the Wongster and their support team.
And his whole team.
And the whole team. But the fact is that we are playing on a fan-made platform. It's just incredible that they've managed to create such a fantastic functioning platform that has really been a joy to use. So once again, big congratulations to them for putting it all together.
I can understand why, like, there's no AFL-owned game yet. They've got a lot of other stuff to be working out. 17 rounds, fair pay, like, all of this stuff. But the fact that, we didn't wait for that with fantasy. We just, Selby just went and made it is
just
awesome.
went and did it himself. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
But speaking of people just going and doing it themselves, my final point, John, sorry, I've got so many points, is that, like, when we did the pre-season survey between 6 and 7, one of the highest, like, asking coaches that either didn't play in season 6 but want to in 7 or are going to play again, like, what do they want to get involved? Having better access to statistics, kind of podcasts or discussions and spaces where they can be talking about this, and news articles where they can be reading it, were 3 of the highest answers of what people wanted to be able to engage with in this space. And over the course of, like, the last 3 months, all 3 of those have popped up and taken off, and it's just so great to see people in the community going, oh, there's a space to fill, I'll do it. I'm not going to sit around and wait for something official to come through. I'll just make it myself. And that's one of the things I really love about this AFLW fantasy community.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's really taken off. There's so many different accounts that you can follow these days. What's your favourite, Mel?
Well, I really like Bailey's stuff, but I don't know if that's just
no,
if that's a cheeky answer.
Good stuff. Yeah,
Bailey's
Love your work,
energy.
Bailey. Love your work, Bailey.
Not only does he not sleep, but he is just so invested and he cares so much, and he's got such a great analytical mind behind it all. There's never a dull moment when you have a connection with Bailey. So keep up the good work.
Mel, I'm a little bit cut that you didn't pick the dub, given that it's Jono and I writing the content.
See, I would have picked the dub, but I was like, man, those captaincy articles and that wheeling and dealing just really drags it down.
There's 4 of us, we can all give a piece.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. Big shout out to Azza as well, we got to say, because
absolutely.
his work to create another AFLW news and stat space is just fantastic as well. But it's all come on the back of a fantastic community, and it's so great to see that the game is growing alongside the fantasy game as well. So just a big shout out to everyone who's involved.
I think my favourite thing about the dub is that we've still got the state league stats there, and those are incredible. I think I refer to them every week. Because we're chatting, we've got these new players coming in debuting, and it's like, God, what have they done? How do they go? And it's just all in the one place. It's really
definitely want to
fantastic.
shout out to the state league stats for getting McKeely Custerman in. That definitely helped me out a lot.
Look, that one not so much, but there's been some
Not so
other good
much.
ones. Tamara Smith was a hell of a preseason pick for that reason alone.
But I guess that's the thing is, I would never have had the resource to be able to say Keely Custerman, fantastic Sandful W player, without those stats there. And even though it didn't pan out, to have that there is just a bloody fantastic resource.
Even from the ABC, getting Kate O'Halloran to fantasy has come to her attention. She's written up an article. It's been fantastic. That's definitely drawn some more attention around how the community is building this AFLW fantasy game in the background. Like the fact that this little game that had 2,000 players by one bloke hacking it together just a few months ago is now getting written up in ABC. It's come so far.
Is there anything that we think that, like, moving into next season might be able to bring it to the next level? It's been a fantastic year, and I don't want to say that I'm trying to disparage the platform by any stretch, but what do you think is probably, is there anything that you guys think would make it easier for new coaches going into next season?
Yeah, I think the next stage for the game, one thing that I like to waste my time on all the time is looking at other people's teams and just seeing how they've structured them. It's a phenomenal way to waste your Mondays and Tuesdays. So that's what I'm really excited.
Only those 2 days.
I'm wasting my time on other things the other days.
Got it.
After the Mondays and Tuesdays, he's got to edit the podcast. So yeah, but it was fantastic to see. I think the AFLW Fantasy Twitter posted up the top teams in the latter rounds to show how they were lining up, and that's the sort of insight that we want, saying how have they managed to get up there, who am I missing. Like, I definitely agree with that, Jono. It's probably one thing that would just give you that little bit of extra insight to possibly push other coaches to push towards that top score, and also give newer coaches an idea of saying, okay, this is how someone who's doing really well is going. How do I build something like that?
And I reckon the other thing that, obviously this is quite self-centered, but just live updates to the stats, like throughout the weekend, to kind of better grasp kind of where my score is going to be. But then I think the other, and just jumping in before anyone else mentions anything, I think the big thing that I want to see, and this is not from the platform, but this is from the AFLW, is either consolidated reporting of teams on Thursdays and Fridays.
Oh, yes.
And
absolutely.
Thank God.
And just specifically from this weekend, but I think speaks to a larger problem, is the quality of injury reporting appears to be pretty poor. And I think that definitely was a drag upon the season. And it kind of was a little bit more telling this year when it was a lot more competitive competition. Like, the inability to kind of know consistently whether or not players would be named in or out because of injuries that otherwise had not been released or discussed earlier in the week was pretty telling and a bit frustrating.
Yeah, and I think the perfect example of this is the fact that we nearly had a scoop on Emma Carney being injured and being out. I'd like to think we're pretty good at what we do, but we shouldn't be the ones that are getting that news out to people. That should be an AFLW news reporting that, rather than us being like, we saw Emma Carney at the game wearing a knee brace, watch out for it.
Yeah.
As I say, the chaos in that final round where you had Randall, Schleicher, Carney, and Eilish Sheeran, 4 of the most highly owned players in the defensive lineup, all of them out or at risk of injury. Oh, I really loved that final round for that reason.
Really, what this tells me is that we need to become AFLW injury reporters, Liam, because we've apparently got pretty good eyes for it.
Apparently, I saw some photos going around on Twitter of people sending Twitter DMs to Eilish Sheeran asking, are you playing this weekend? And clearly she'd been asked by a couple of people because it was the same response each time. Yes, I'll be playing on the weekend. Good luck.
Oh, poor thing.
And I felt really bad for her because I'm like, okay, I can understand why people are doing it. It's better than what a lot of them otherwise get probably on their social media, which can be some pretty hateful stuff, at least in some of the men's sports.
Yeah. At least they're trying to support her.
But at least it's an earnest question. Like, we want to be seeing you playing. Are you going to be playing? But I also just like, this could be alleviated. There are ways around this. Maybe a little bit better consolidated reporting from the clubs about where injuries are going to progress.
Yeah. Well, we've done some of our own investigation and reporting because we put out a couple of high-quality polls on Insta and Twitter.
Dedicated research.
Oh, yes. Primary research here. Look, one of the polls we put out on Twitter earlier this week, best rookie. Jono, I know that you've prepared some of the answers here for us. Who voted for best rookie?
Yeah, so we've put up 4 names for best rookie on the popular vote. And the 4 were Hannah Ewings in the forward line, Abby Dowrick in the midfield, Lucy Wales in the ruck, and Eilish Sheeran in defence. And taking it out by a very good margin was Eilish Sheeran, who has just had a phenomenal season playing in Richmond's backline. Averaged 57 for the season in the end, with a high score of 80, I think, in round 7. Made coaches, nearly twice the amount of cash as her starting price. I don't think that... I think this is a very, very deserving winner of the Best Rookie of the Year award. This would have been my pick by a mile. What do you think?
I think she's arguably in the All-Australian team at this stage.
No, it's not even arguable. Yeah. Like, slam dunk.
Yeah, she should be in the All-Australian team. And, Jono, you've prepared some stats here for what truly was an amazing debut season for Eilish.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, some of the numbers she's put up this season are incredible, and a few are really worth calling out. So, firstly, she's had the most intercepts in a single season of any player ever. And she's done it by 30 intercepts. It's an enormous margin. So she had 97 this season. And in that, I think in round 1 alone, she had the second highest intercepts in a single match with 17. And she's done that on her AFLW debut, which is just incredible. She also currently leads the AFLW for highest meters gained across one's career per game, which is, again, incredible in your debut season, and has the 5th most rebounds career average of any player, which, again, this is a player who, she's like a 29-year-old, was coming out of the VFLW, was picked up, I think, around pick 60, I think it was pick 59 or something like that in the draft last season. May not have been drafted if it wasn't for the expansions, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I think this is just such an incredible season from someone who has come from absolute nowhere.
Not technically nowhere, because I believe she was an injury train-on player at GWS.
Possibly, yeah.
I feel like she'd actually been on a roster before and had not played because of an ACL injury. But yes, relatively from the clouds.
But it just goes to show that you give people opportunity and they can flourish. It doesn't really matter where they come from, whether they're these top-tier young superstars or just someone who, as we've said with Eilish, has essentially just been plucked from the state leagues, because this has been one of the great debut seasons of anyone. And as you say, John, it's come at the age of 29. So fantastic effort from Eilish. As we said, should be a lock to be All-Australian and a very deserving winner of the Rookie of the Year.
But I also think it can't go without saying that given what she was priced at and what she's come out to finish as a top 10 or top 11 defender is pretty outstanding.
But
up
also, against those big names we were just calling out before that were they were screwing with fantasy teams in round 10 because the top 4 defenders, well, I mean, she was one of them, but for her name to be up there is very impressive.
Yeah, and just to kind of do that as as a rookie, bargain priced, to finish as a top 10 scoring defender is incredibly impressive. And someone that kind of became a bit of a must-have to be able to get up in rounds 3 through 7, to be able to kind of gain rank. You needed to have her in your side. And that was after she was not particularly highly owned to start the season. I actually still remember someone in round 1 sent us a Twitter question asking, should I get rid of Eilish Sheeran, or I can't even remember who else it was. It was I think it might have been a Port Adelaide bargain rookie. It might have been.
It was either them or a Sydney one. It could have been like a Kennedy, someone like that.
And do I stay fat and go with Sheeran? And we eventually agreed that you could because she had the role. But yeah, that was it's actually ridiculous kind of what she's done given where she's now ranked as a scorer.
Yeah, and she was probably one of the few players that we did miss in our preseason wraps, because to be frank, who would have thought that a 29-year-old late draftee was going to come out and do exactly what she did? And I'm guessing
with not a big scoring pedigree either.
Yeah, she's just had an incredible year. Incredible.
So in round 1, she was actually only 4% owned.
Wow.
I'm guessing it was much different in round 2.
Yeah. I also just want to quickly shout out that it's not just our popular vote, but Eilish Sheeran has won an actual Fantasy Community Prize award, the Charlie Rowbottom Medal for Best Rookie of the AFLW season, awarded by DT Talk, which is essentially saying that, more often than not, she's been one of the highest scoring rookies available across all lines. So seriously impressive season. And also thanks to Benji for writing that up every week. It's been a really thoroughly enjoying series to read each week.
Good work, Benji. Great stuff.
Love your work. So, yes, Isla Sheeran took out the first spot on our poll as well, but the second spot on our poll, with 28% of the votes, went to Lucy Wales. The really interesting thing about Lucy Wales coming up second here is that there were a lot of rookie rucks that we thought had huge amounts of potential at the start of the season, and just so many of them went out injured. So, not to overshadow any of Lucy Wales or even like Steph Wales's performance here as being an amazing rookie ruck, but I'm so interested to see kind of coming into next season all of these rookie rucks that we thought were going to be fantastic and then unfortunately didn't see the season through. There's so much awesome potential there as well that will be great to follow on next season.
I also think Lucy Wales is someone who has got a pretty decent amount of the vote, but would probably have not started in a lot of sides because she was not the first choice ruck for Hawthorn. Yeah, she was a chop-out ruck for Tamara Luke, who played one game and 30 seconds. And very much her injury was the beginning of the precipitous slide in my fantasy rank all season. But again, kind of speaks to a player that we didn't actually expect to kind of dominate coming in, having been a basketballer and not played a massive amount of AFL before getting drafted, into a side where there was actually Tamara Luke, who has ruck experience at the AFLW level, and then Tegan Cunningham, who also had ruck experience at an AFLW level. So again, a very interesting story for a player who ranked very highly and who averaged very well.
Yeah. Or even like when one of those injuries came through and everyone was talking about Cambridge McCormick because she was one of the only rucks left that you could get before the lockout. Rook rucks. Like, she was a name that we hadn't really considered or talked about, but then because of all these ruck injuries, she became up there. She was great scoring. Like, it's just injury bears. What's that? I'm not even going to try to say that saying. But
yeah, it's almost the exact same thing with Steph Wales, who sort of was the second highest averaging rookie ruck, who, again, wasn't regarded as the number one ruck for Essendon with Georgia Borg, then going down with injury. So, as you say, Mel, injury breeds opportunity.
That's what I was trying to say. You know me and my catchphrases, I'm all over them. Abby Dowrick in as the third highest vote. Jono got some cool stats on her.
Can we not talk about Abby Dowrick? I don't need, she's a gun.
I really thought that Mel was going to throw to you for it as well.
I really thought you were going to throw to me.
Yeah. How many of these stats happened after you
traded?
No,
look, we need to talk about two particular stats here, and I'm sorry, Liam, the second one in particular is going to hurt.
The highest ever scored by a rookie? Yeah, I know.
Well, the first one, we have to acknowledge, she scored the most amount of points of any rookie, and in a sensational year in the midfield, made a truck ton of cash. Actually dropped in the back half of the season. And it's because a lot of her cash came from one game in particular where she put up 134, which was actually not just the best score of any rookie. It was the sixth highest score of the season from any player. And, three of the ones above her were all Kiara Bowers. So it was very hard to find a player better than her. Do you know there's only actually 5 players in the history of the competition, ever, that have scored more than that? That blows my mind.
Wow. Would have been a good week to have it.
I think we're sitting on a potential superstar in the coming years. 2 to 3 years, once she's settled in a little bit, she could be one of the best premiums we're ever going to have.
You're going to need to mention that to Lauren Arnell, who seems intent on making her a half forward.
We'll see.
Just what I'm saying. Just what I'm saying. I get it. Her clearance ability is elite. She's a great tackler. Got a massive kick on her. And that's why, when I saw that the role had changed, she's played 2 weeks as a forward, I traded her out.
Look, outside of that game, it was probably the right call, because she didn't score particularly well after that.
And then in fourth place, we have E-Wings.
Hannah E-Wings.
E-Wings.
Yeah, another terrific season. One of the highest scoring forwards, made only the 31,000, which is probably because she was the only one on this list that started a higher base price, is the third pick overall in the draft. But she was very, very consistent this past season, and had a lot of time in the middle. Is another one that has won a Rising Star nomination. I think all except for Sheeran have on this list just because she's ineligible. But yeah, Hannah Ewing's is another superstar that Port's really lucked out on there. I think they're between Ewings and Dowrick, they could have a very scary midfield in a few years.
We've got a pretty long honourable mentions list down here. We will probably post this around later.
Yep.
But one I just want to quickly shout out. Thank you to Brenna Tarrant for voting in the Insta poll for Molly Eastman. Brenna Tarrant, #1 fan. Hope you listen. Bobs won't, but love your work.
There she is. Congratulations. Had the most 1%ers ever in a single match in round 10. Phenomenal effort by Brenna Tarrant to end the season.
She single-handedly stopped Chloe Shear scoring about 9 goals.
Yeah, she did.
There you go. There's a stat that's not on here.
Because that was looking pretty dicey, but she did a very good job on a very informed forward.
Oh. One of the other polls we had up, best starting pick.
And I'm shattered by this one because it was always going to be the one that we're about to talk through. And I think we'll definitely throw to Jono for this one. But
what you mean? My favourite player? You know what?
Liam?
Outrageous.
Can you tell us who the #1 player was?
Yes, it was Janome Anderson.
Love your work, Janome.
No, it was Abby Mackay.
Yes, we had Abby Mackay, Chelsea Randall, who Will was keen on pre-season, Elise Parker, who Will was also keen on pre-season, and Alice Edmonds, the often overlooked.
We'll get to Alice
We'll get to
Edmonds.
talk to Alice. Can we? I think we need to spend as much time talking about Alice Edmonds as we do anyone else on this list because her season is fascinating.
But first, Jono, this was your pick. You absolutely nailed this one pre-season. Just give us the rundown.
Abby Mackay was just a superstar this season, honestly. Like, she's come out and she's improved on her average by 32 from last season to come out and put up an 80.3 average. One of the most consistent seasons playing entirely through the middle. She was the second highest averaging forward. She was the 8th most tackles of any player this season and the 5th most handballs. Well, Kiara Bowers naturally of all stats, but yeah, just blown me away that she's come out and in a situation where Carlton were desperately looking around for midfielders, having lost so many of the previous seasons, she's stepped up in a really, really big way. And wow, what a pick she was to start with for the 11% of coaches that started with her.
The question will be now, after an elite season, will she win the Emma Swanson Award for line leading scorer who becomes a midfielder next year and thus undervalued?
Yeah, still very much coming in. Like, this was only her, 3rd or 4th season, so a lot of potential, I think.
First as a full-time midfielder as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. She looked very much at home.
And I don't want to give too much props to Carlton as a long-time Bomber supporter, but I think that a midfield trio of Hill, Mackay and Maddie Guerin, when she comes back, will actually be a very good core for years to come.
Yeah. I mean, Hill and Abby Mackay, of course, they led this Carlton side through what was probably a tough year, and they just put in 100% every single game through that Carlton midfield. Cannot be faulted for the effort they put in. So I like your call of the Emma Swanson Award for Abby Mackay. I think that she's one of those players that are very few coaches will look at next season if she is a pure midfielder. That might just be a sneaky, unique peak, much like Emma Swanson was this year.
Yeah. The other thing about Abby Mackay that I was really excited by is that she made a lot of cash for coaches as well. Like, she actually made the 7th most money of all forwards.
Because she was so good, no one's going to trade her out and make the most of that cash.
No, but you are making the most of that cash by trading her in and then getting so much value out of it. You know, that's where the value is.
True.
Yeah, you don't have to pay $100,000 for her if you got on her early.
And to be honest, the same can almost be said of our second on the list here, which is Chelsea Randall, who was enormous this season, honestly. Coming back after an injury-affected season last year, was the highest averaging defender by such a big margin. Averaged 84 in the end. And I think second was, Ruby Schleicher, who was well behind on 68.
I don't think 68 is an accurate reflection, given that also includes the...
Does include a 12.
She was averaging about 74, 75, I think.
70 to 71.
Yeah.
Even taking that out, though, it's still a margin.
The Chelsea Randall one is one that I wish I'd gone in with more confidence on, because I mentioned it pre-season and I went for Sarah Verrier instead, and if I just had have stuck to my guns with Chelsea Randall, it would have made things so much nicer for me early on. But what a season from Chelsea Randall. And we've talked about it a bit throughout the weeks, is she can just play absolutely anywhere, and it didn't really matter where she played. She seemed to be able to score pretty well, barring the one week where she scored a 30, and I think she was playing a stopping role from memory.
Yep. It was the tagging roles. It was the 2 weeks where she tagged predominantly, were her two worst scores, and then finished the season as a midfielder/forward in the hottest run of form of Adelaide's season between rounds 4 and 8.
Well, that's the thing.
Just
her last 4 games, she actually put up 7 goals. Just think very, very strong forward after playing the entire season before that in the midfield.
Because we've talked about this amongst ourselves about where Chelsea Randall might be listed next season, and the consensus seems to be she'll probably be listed as a midfielder. But I really hope that late season run might let her get a forward status, because that might actually keep her in the real relevant section, I think.
But yeah, I mean, even if we're just talking about value again, she improved by 49 on her average from the previous season, which, to be fair, is not reflective because she only had a few games last season. But if you take it at what she was priced at the start of the season, it's still an increase of I think it was 21, which is just ridiculous.
Classic fantasy strategy that we spoke about at the very start. Looking for someone that's going to score well and truly above what they averaged last season. Big tick.
Third on this list was Alice Parker. Will, do you want to chat to this?
Yeah, Alice Parker. I was really, really keen on Alice Parker early. She had the fantasy pedigree, finished the season with an average of 90, and a lot of that was affected by a slow run in the middle of the season when teams started to realise that if you put the clamps on Alice Parker, you really slow down GWS altogether. But she started really well, finished with that 106, and made plenty of money to go alongside. She just went about her business with clearances and disposals, and was one of the really good midfield picks early on. So yeah, I was very happy with Alice Parker this season.
I'm happy to say that between Mackay, Randall and Parker, my very good ranking after 3 or 4 rounds was entirely because of that. Those 3 really carried me early on.
Yeah. We picked those ones, and then we're going to get to number 4 here, which we sort of picked, but we really, really didn't. Because we knew that the Bulldogs were going to have the breakout ruck of the season. We just completely picked the wrong player.
Can we carry that across? We spent so long talking about Celine Moody. I'm not sure if we can just transpose that onto a different...
I think we can. I think I've had enough losses this year. I'm going to take this as a win.
You know what, Liam? Take it away. Take it away, Liam. Tell us about Alice Edmonds.
Alice Edmonds was truly from the stars, because she did not look like she had this kind of game in any of her previous seasons. She was delisted by Richmond, pick up as an injury player at the Bulldogs at the beginning of season 6, didn't look particularly great in the games, and Celine Moody looked like she had all of the same running as her sister, looked like she was going to be the dominant player. Alice Edmonds has just descended and become not only an elite fantasy ruck with the 3rd highest average amongst all rucks, but a statistically dominant season, the likes of which we have never seen before, in that she had the most hit-outs in a single season, the 2nd most as an average, and then also most hit-outs to advantage in a single season, more than almost all teams.
Yeah, not just players, teams.
Yeah.
And it really has kind of just shown that some of the best seasons can come from truly anywhere.
I would have said she was an absolute lock for the All-Australian, but if you go based on the official AFLW Team of the Week...
she's been shafted about 14 times.
Oh, she was in this one. She
was, yeah, of course she has to be. She's a gun.
She got I think 2 towards the end of the season, but it was one of those things where week after week she just managed to not quite get in, and people started thinking, this is a bit odd, because she was truly dominant through the season.
Yeah, this was a campaign of the people to demand that Alice Edmonds be included. Every week it was how can she have the most hit-outs to advantage ever and not be included as the ruck? What do you have to do?
In the team.
Yeah.
I think possibly my favourite piece of AFLW media that got put out this week was, I think the Bulldogs put out their own Team of the Week, which was just the entire team of Alice Edmonds. Just because she'd had another dominant game and just somehow had missed out once again, but... Fantastic season from Alice Edmonds. She did exactly what we thought Moody would do, just to do that full circle. If you were one of the very few coaches who decide to jump on Alice Edmonds at any stage throughout the season, you would have been absolutely stoked with her output.
Yeah, who would have thought that that's the sideways we should have made when we realised Celine Moody wasn't going to be the rock? I didn't even consider that I should just go straight to Alice Edmonds. That would have been the smart play.
Because I went to Fuller, and I kept Fuller. I was the only one of us that didn't go for the loophole throughout the year, which was bizarre in and of itself. But I went to Fuller because she was in a good patch of form. But if I had gone for Edmonds, I reckon I would have ended up a good 100 to 150 points better off.
That's hat territory, Will.
Yeah, they were priced pretty similarly at that point as well.
I'd like to think that my transition away from Celine Moody to allow me to bring in Abby Mackay, that still was the correct choice in my mind. But I don't think Alice Edmonds would have been bad either.
No, agreed. All right, so we've talked a bit about those starters, the breakout picks, but we've mentioned some unique picks before. So we've also done a best unique poll. So who wants to run through those ones?
Well, I think it's interesting trying to run a most unique, like a popularity vote for a unique player. It seems quite contradictory.
When you've only got 4 options.
Yeah. But look, we did limit it to 4 options, all of whom had very low ownership throughout the season and definitely finished quite low. And I think that these were all amazing players if you had them in your team for the majority of the year. So the winner of the Best Unique Award was Emma Swanson, who took out with nearly 40%.
-3 Emma Swanson.
Yeah, look, aside from a rough finish to the year, which would have hurt a lot of those coaches in the top 100, aside from that, had an average of 90 for the season and a high score of 113. I think she was remarkably consistent. You'd love to see someone who goes from being, on a forward or defender line come into the midfield and then perform just as well, if not better, the following season. So, fantastic. It was the 7th highest averaging midfielder for the year. And actually had the most centre clearances of any player, just as a little aside there. Yeah.
Very good.
And also immense satisfaction from watching someone who suffered from that, line change in the fantasy game, come through as a mid, still be relatively unique, score well. Probably most of the reason I brought her into my team, just because that made me so happy. So, great unique pick. Glad I did that one. But I got to say, it was all because of, what's his name? JS Design going on about how much he loved having Swanson in his team early in the game. And I was like, I want Swanson in my team. So random shout out there. Thanks, JS Design, for banging on about Swanson.
Yeah, I think he's one of the ones who felt the pain and the pinch in round 10, because I think he dropped from 7th down to about 43rd or something like that. But his team had a great season. He's been great to follow and read his little write-ups every week.
I got to say, number 2 in this poll.
This is the player I really want to talk about.
Very underrated player. All right, Liam, who was number 2?
Number 2 in the poll, and my vote for best unique pick of the year, was Ali Anderson. Because I think that what she did, going from averages in the 2 seasons prior of 71 in 2021 and then 66.9 in season 6, to then pump it up to 91.6 for Ali Anderson is immense. Like, to have done that, and in a midfield that we kind of thought that had kind of maxed out, pretty much. We thought that the value was going to be in the other lines where players became more consistent. We were expecting a bigger season from Nat Grider. Brisbane had an incredibly consistent midfield group, but the side effect of Emily Bates being possibly the most targeted stoppage player because of her dominant season 6 was that Ali Anderson took her game to another level. She went at 6 possessions per game better than the season prior. She had more tackles. She had double the number of clearances. She truly took herself from like a good midfielder in an elite team to an elite midfielder in the one of the most dominant sides of all time.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing with Ellie Anderson was that clearances thing. Second most centre clearances for the season for a player who'd spent a lot of time as an outside midfielder, a lot of time on the wing in previous seasons, to move in and be that real damaging inside and outside player was just really great to see from her.
Yeah, now actually holds the record for most centre clearances in a single match. Had 7 against the Hawks back in round 9, so very impressive.
And first Indigenous player to kick 1,000 goals.
1,000
Have
goals.
1,000
Wow.
possessions.
Oh my god.
If she
That would
has
be
somehow
incredible.
kicked 1,000 goals,
So
that would
she's
be
actually
insane.
she's the second behind Buddy Franklin in that regard. Sorry.
She's the first AFLW team to do it.
I said that so confidently.
You really launched into it.
Oh, good on you, Ali Anderson. 1,000 goals, love it.
But I think this I have a bad feeling that the reason why she hasn't got more votes is every single Emily Bates owner being just a bit burnt.
Oh, yes.
You would just
Very
be so
sour.
cut. I know that Rez, the winner from last year, was big on Emily Bates.
Yes. He at one point was going to name his team Bates M1. He was that confident on it. So
I have to say, even with having Bates in the team, I think he still ended up with a higher rank than I did.
oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we've got number 3 here, Isabel Pritchard. One so unique, I've literally never considered bringing her into my team, I don't think.
The worst part about it is I actually started with Isabel Pritchard in Season 6. And I thought, you know what, she's going to move up onto the wing, be really, really good. And Season 6, she did not. She did move up to the wing, but she wasn't really, really good. So I completely ignored her this season, and she ended up being really, really good. So that was a classic Will picking the season early, which, as Jono in particular knows, is very, very typical of me.
Yeah. Well, this is something I'd taken that into account. I actually put her in the first wheelin' and dealin' article that we did this season, and then promptly never traded her in.
She was a player that I almost traded in towards the end of the season, but she was playing mostly as a tall winger for a lot of the season, so playing a lot through that midfield. Average of 62.3 to be one of the best defenders you could get, and just looks a really, really good player for the future for the Dogs.
Yeah, she's also just very consistent. She didn't have the low scores, but she didn't have super high scores. It's a tight-knit band, so it was just a very happy player to have every week in and out.
Yeah. But it meant that at no stage did she lose enough money for us to be like, oh, great, let's pick her up going into next week. It means that she's probably going to start season 8 fairly well priced.
As probably as a midfielder as well.
But with,
Yeah, so-
with Schleicher and Carney missing the final round, she actually overtook them both to be the third highest scoring defender for the season. So,
Wow.
like one of those just quiet achievers, phenomenal season from her that I don't think has gotten enough recognition.
Yeah, well, we should definitely be talking about her more.
And fourth on the list is your girl, Mel.
Yes. Ash McCarthy, who both Jono and I had actually, I believe,
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah, I think we got her in. You got her in 1 week before I did, but pretty much the whole season been the two of us. Yeah. Yeah. So Ash McCarthy started the season on absolute fire across the first 3 rounds. I think she put up a 99, an 84, and a 73 from memory. But phenomenal season, and obviously a lot better than last season, given she had that 4 injury quite early. But still, even looking at seasons before that, this was her best season by 9-10 fantasy points. It's really impressive effort. 5th highest averaging forward, and actually had a really high tackle account. That's how she was scoring so well week in, week out. I'm reasonably confident not only was she tackling a lot, but she was being tackled a lot. I don't have a stat that verifies that she's the most tackled player in the comp, but I'm reasonably confident.
If anyone at Champion Data listens to this and can confirm or deny whether or not she was the most tackled player, that would really do a lot for our sanity. That'd be lovely.
Yeah.
She was always thereabouts with the tackles, whether it was tackling or receiving the tackles, put it that way.
It was both helpful to watch because she was always around the ball, had it in possession a lot, but then you were just like, just get a handball off. Just do something. Please, you're so close.
Quick kick, just get away.
Yeah.
Oh.
Before we move off the end of the unique section, there's something I just want to add on here. I follow a lot of accounts on Twitter, but I think my favourite ones, Mel, to follow are Swampy, Oliver Gygax, and Jaden Popowski, because they post so many stats across the season for AFLW, many of which I've been using on this podcast here today. And I need to thank them profusely for it.
For making Jono seem like he's really knowledgeable when really he's just ripping off other people's content.
Exactly.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah. But look, one of the things that I'm going to rip off here today is the set and forget AFLW fantasy team that Jaden has pulled together. he's found a team that if you'd had the hindsight and you just decided, I don't need to trade at all, I'll just put this team out on the park and I'll see how they go, you would have won the competition by over 400 points if you'd started with this team. It's phenomenal. And so many of them, in hindsight, you're like, of course I should have started with, Isabel Pritchard in your backline, Ange Foley, Indy Tarhow, Isla Sheeran, and Molly Eastman, because they all had great seasons.
That's your backline?
That would have been the backline. That's the backline.
Oh my God.
If you had Alice
I think
Edmonds
we all
and
had
Ruck,
variations of this, with the exception of Pritchard.
midfield of Bowers, Marinoff, Rowbottom, Ali Anderson, and Abby Dowrick, which, I had 3 of those. We were so close. Forward line of Jazz Garner, Abby Mackay, Hannah Ewings, Ella Roberts, and Megan Kaufman. If you had that team, you would have won the comp by 428. You did not need to trade once.
Who was the ruck?
Alice Edmonds.
Alice Edmonds? Yeah.
Alice Edmonds. All you needed to do. Just incredible.
It's interesting. I think out of all of those lines, more people would have been close to the forward because Megan Kaufman had that amazing preseason game that got people very excited to bring her in, and she was quite highly owned at the very start. And then obviously Ella Roberts, a lot of people had in from the start. Abby Mackay, if they listened to Jono, and Jazz Garner, no brainer. But I'm very jealous that he's gone and done this because this is something I've wanted to do. I just don't have the time or the skills, but I'm so glad he's done it.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal team. Mel, he has actually done another one, if you want to look that up in your own time, about if you wanted to have players that were only owned by more than 10% of coaches at the start of the season. A popular version of this, which still would have won the comp with no trades.
Oh my God.
I don't know how he does it, but he's got some skills, this boy.
Yeah, given how much we burn ourselves with our trades each week, it actually doesn't surprise me that you could have just picked a team at the start and sat on it. And none of these are too
There were
surprising.
several rounds during the season where all of us were like, if I had have done nothing, I would have been better off. So
I had a week where I
many
technically did
times.
nothing.
That's called doing a Jono. That's
Yeah. If I had done nothing any of the last 3 rounds of the men's comp, I would have another hat. That's all I needed to do was just nothing. Any of the 3 weeks. Terrible. Terrible.
Look, we have one final poll. Don't think we actually
No, we didn't do a poll.
need to discuss.
Did not bother with a poll.
Best fantasy player. She's back in
Janome
Bowers-ness.
Janome Anderson.
Oh, it's obviously Bowers.
It's Kiara Bowers.
what a season.
Incredible.
I just want to just say, at the halfway point of the season, we were all saying the era of Kiara Bowers is over.
Yeah.
She is no longer the dominant player
I
that she
literally said
was.
that sentence to you.
And to be fair on Jono held the faith, but
Held the faith. She was 4th.
Yeah, you wanted her out of the Sweet 16 altogether.
I wanted 5th.
But I think basically what this has shown us is that the only thing that can stop Kiara Bowers is COVID, because the reason she started so slow this year was because she did miss that whole preseason, basically 3 weeks in isolation. Slow start to the year, and we said it so many times as well. If there was ever a player that could prove us wrong, it was Kiara Bowers, and she took that to heart, because not only did she finish the year strongly, she finished the year in probably the best fantasy form of any player ever.
AFLW and AFLM.
After we did that round 4 Sweet 16, I think she had one more round where she just didn't quite make the 100, and then she went on to average 143.6.
Yep.
That's nuts. That's incredible. I don't understand how you do that. That's
Yeah,
better than most players. It's better than every player's best outside of Ebony Marinoff.
It was just incredible. And I brought her in when she scored that 164, and I thought, you beaut, I'm never going to see her score anywhere near like that again. I've absolutely done this magnificently. And then she pulls out 184 in the final round. It's just... words cannot describe just how good this fantasy run of Kiara Bowers was. What a bloody good effort it's been.
Very selfishly for me, I was definitely round 5 doubting my namesake. Bowers down to me. I was like, it's going to be a remnants of players past because she's dropping off. Nah, she's back. Keeping that name for next season.
And I think the big thing for Turbo is it's an untaggable game style. Because
absolutely,
as much as it's a lot of possessions, a lot of those possessions are just picking up balls that have been dropped because she's tackled someone and then bombing it forwards.
Yeah, just getting it out of it in a quick clearance.
And that's not... And teams have realised that they just can't tag that. There's no point putting a stoppage body because usually the easiest way to break a tag is to try and stand next to another player from the opposition so that it creates a bit of congestion. Turbo, completely different option. Just tackle the player after the stoppage has started, and then it completely negates it, and her game style persists from a fantasy perspective. Unrivaled in that capacity. Her dominance in tackles is unlike the dominance of any other player in almost any sport that I can think of. She is like the equivalent of... She is fantasy Tom Brady. Like, she is without par. Ridiculous.
Fantasy Bradman.
Well, I've actually got some tackle statistics here, which I wanted to bring up. So, firstly, she's just had the most tackles that anyone's ever had in a season, with 146. But I kind of want to put this in context because, I mean, averaging 14.6 point tackles a game is incredible, but what does it mean? I think the key thing here is that the second highest tackle count in the AFLW is from Ebony Marinoff, who's had 534 tackles from 63 games. And yet, from 20 less games, Kiara Bowers has more tackles at 536.
Yeah, four tackles more per game. Just incredible.
Like, it is actually absurd. And I just want to, like, harken back. I can't remember if it was in just our conversations or we ended up actually recording a Jono, which is like, you really got to be wary of players over 30 coming in as primos and maintaining that primo status. Turbo's done that off the back of no preseason. She was basically bad for the 3 weeks that she missed. And then basically from that point onwards was ridiculous. Like, at 30 plus, this season is outrageous. And to try and describe it with, you know, just 5 to 10 minutes of podcasting doesn't do it sufficient justice. It is unlike anything we will ever see again.
Yeah, we could have a whole episode just on Kiara Bowers' season.
I'm really hoping that the AFL Fantasy Pod gets her back on again, just to have that chat.
I'd love to hear just how they can go. So you scored 164, and you've just gone and beat that by 5 more tackles.
Yeah.
How did you? Oh,
Yeah.
And she's so humble about it as well.
So just to start on what I think will be a discussion for the next 8 months, is at any point Fremantle going to change their game style to actually win games?
oof.
I think they need a fit team and a fit midfield. That's what held them back. Hayley Miller was really in the doghouse this season. A lot of their backline struggled early. They were missing a lot of players.
Gabbo Sullivan.
Gabbo Sullivan as well. The Antonios up forward weren't there most of the season. I know they won't have Cara next season, but Ebony needs to come back for them.
I think Ebony Antonio being fit for a whole season is the biggest thing that cost Fremantle this year, not having her. She is such a pivotal player up forward for them. So,
but they're never going to get Gemma Horton back. She's not good. Like, they don't have a player to kick goals. Like, I don't think that they've got necessarily someone coming through as a third, fourth fiddle in the midfield. Like, there are reasonable questions to be asked. I think it's going to be, there's no definitive answer, but it's just a question that you have to put out there. They've had a pretty down season.
I mean, I'm pretty positive on the signs from Ain Tai, who's just come out and kicked 4 goals against the Hawks on the weekend.
On your tie.
On your
Anya.
tie.
Yeah.
Again, Jono, a player who is over 30. Yes.
She's also really tall.
She's just kept growing as she's got older.
That's, by the way, that's all we're putting in our podcast description this week.
On your tie.
On your tie. She's really tall.
I think the one thing I will say for that is we saw what Eilish Sheeran could do coming out of the state leagues. I think that that's something that Freo will be targeting this season. Is someone who could do something similar. Someone who could do something similar but up forward would be what I'd be saying.
You're thinking of like a Tara Bohanna type from the Southern Saints a couple of years ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I think it would be remiss of us not to mention the elite work that Ebony Marinoff has done after a very down round 1. The only round she copped a tag.
Yeah.
But I think the injuries to the rest of the Adelaide team has meant that sides have decided that they're not going to... they feel like Adelaide might be a little bit more fallible without Chelsea Randall and without Erin Phillips, so have tried to run their own game style, and that has translated to Ebony Marinoff dominance.
Once again, Marinoff and Bowers, 1 and 2, you can put your house on it. It just happens every bloody year.
Sell the farm to get Bowers and then put your house on it.
Yep.
Well, we've given a lot of credit shout-outs throughout this pod because, we couldn't have done this without so many people and so many awesome content creators amongst the community that have added to what we've been saying and supported us as we go. Liam, you've got a final shout-out here?
Oh, yeah, final piece of shout-out work for me. The only name that hasn't... Oh, actually, there's a couple of names I want to mention. One, his name's Trev on Twitter, and he put out a post at the beginning of the season saying, I've created a Google Chrome add-on that will allow the AFLW Fantasy website to show fantasy scores, and honestly, it saved me so much anguish dealing with the footy info or having to scroll through my app and ruin my phone battery. It's just some elite stuff, and credit to a community again, that industrious spirit of well, if the AFLW is going to do it, someone's going to have to. So credit to Trev.
Yeah, this other one that I wanted to point out here was Bo Hemley, who is another one who's taken it on himself to put out a regular posting of AFLW fantasy stats, but he also has a regular captain's article weekly that definitely provides me with great ammo to stick it to Liam whenever he picks a dud. So much appreciated, Bo. It's been a pleasure reading your articles every week.
Look, the articles definitely became a little bit easier in the back half of the season because it was Kiara Bowers. That was kind of the majority of the content at that point. In the beginning half of the season, yes, there were some ups and downs.
Absolutely. You were both nailing it all season, quite frankly. But it's for those who can't afford the Bowers that need it, and it's always good to have those articles out there.
Well, we don't get to end this episode with our trades because no more season. Ripperino, but well, thanks.
No, we're not.
Just let the music play. Let the music play.
Thanks. Yeah. So before we do sign off, the plan is for the finals that we're probably going to run a Twitter space early in the week just to kind of chat through some of the AFLW fantasy lines about the games and then also maybe a few fantasy tidbits. The idea being that then we will also upload that to our podcast feed just as a kind of unedited episode just so you can listen back in your own time. We'll also be recording, and we haven't nailed down a time just yet, a Black Book episode of players that we need to be thinking about for next year.
Not the Death Note.
Not Death Notes, not the never trade-ins. These are players that we're saving away that we want to think about. And there will probably be some more discussion probably about some strategies that we're already thinking about, particularly about the discussion we were having earlier on how the draft is going to be different. So that's what the next couple of weeks of content is going to look like. And then obviously it will change in the actual off-season.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for everyone that's stuck it out with us and listened to our episodes each week. All the way from our, intro to AFLW and AFLM at the start of the season, a couple of strategies, our 18 clubs in 18 days. Always good to go back and re-listen to that. We'll endeavour to do that again later. And, of course, all of our round reviews throughout the season. So we will chat to everyone later.
Yeah, no, really appreciated the support everyone's given us this season. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, big thanks to all the listeners. We really can't do it without you, and everyone who's got any skerrick of information. We really appreciate that you've taken the time to listen to us. It's been a huge undertaking. We've been complete novices at this all the way through, so just the fact that anyone has listened to us and we may have helped some people get a hat is really fulfilling for us. So thank you so much to everyone out there that's interacted with us in any way at all.
I have certainly, as much as my season has been terrible, and I have a whole new appreciation for the fact that it's very difficult to do a podcast each week and be chipper when your own team is bad. I have certainly enjoyed the experience. I've loved the new community that has come to AFLW Fantasy from last season, and just the amount of energy and time and investment that's been injected into it. It's been a genuinely rewarding experience, and I really hope that it kind of goes from strength to strength here. we've loved this experience. It's been a brutally difficult process for us. I think we have all had less sleep as a result in the past 4 months, but genuinely loved it. And it's only because of the listeners. We were happy to have 20 people listen to us at all.
That was our goal for the year, was 20 people to listen to us.
And we're 4, so...
Yeah.
Yeah. And I come from a family of 6 people, so they're kind of covering about half our listener base. But honestly, we cannot thank the listeners enough. We hope that we've managed to help, or if not, provide some general entertainment that is vaguely associated with some hobbies that you've decided to attach yourself onto. And so we are genuinely grateful for the experience that we've had, and that comes from you guys.
Yeah, and just quickly on the family connection, I'm pretty sure the Stephen family was literally keeping us afloat for the first few episodes, so a big shout out to the Stephen family for keeping us afloat on the socials.
Nice. Well, as always, we are Free Kick, the Fantasy W podcast. You can find us on all of the socials, Twitter and Insta, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on Insta and Twitter as HiMelD.
You can find me on Twitter at LMTom1.
You can find me on Twitter at OddsandSteven.
And you can find me on Instagram at WillH_VI.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and good luck for next season.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Well, thanks, everyone. Good stuff.